Hi, Zion folks. Pastor Jim here. I'm coming to you from my office at home, and I have some video for you today. No doubt you are in the mode of looking for things to do while you're stuck at home over these last couple of months, and maybe you've been binge watching your favorite TV show. Well, this probably won't become your favorite TV show, but I have a few episodes for you of things that are going on at Zion, and I'd like to share those with you as we try and understand where we're going in the future. Welcome to episode one. What are we reopening? And I want to talk a little bit about where we are with the virus. So, you know that it's still around. You know that it's something that we carry and bring with us when we go out. And sometimes we can be spraying it when we don't even know we're infected with it. You can be non symptomatic and have the virus and be spreading it. And we're trying to determine where that safe zone is. Is it 6 feet? Is it 10 feet? This is what all that physical distancing is about, to try and keep people safe. So I took some statistics from a few days ago. This was when I tried to put all these slides together of where we are with the virus. And if you look at the country as a whole, it looks pretty good. We had that peak there, and then it's kind of gone down a little bit. But a lot of that is New York and New Jersey. So here's New York. They had a huge peak, probably something like a quarter of the cases in the country in New York State. Peaked in kind of mid-April and then have gone down pretty consistently since then. They're doing a real good job of reducing that there. New Jersey, kind of the same thing. Peak in April, a little, maybe like a week later, and then going back down. So the whole country as a whole looks pretty good, but a lot of those improvements in the numbers are from those two states alone. We are now, as of last Friday, at 1.5 million people who have been known to have the virus in the country. And so here's Ohio. If you subtract out this, a lot of the rest of the country looks kind of like this. Ohio did a great job of reacting pretty quickly. We had that peak in about the middle of April here, but it was much less than they had feared. So that all of the things that we did to distance and wash hands and just avoid spreading the virus, stay home, all those things made a big difference. But you can see we are not at a decreasing number of cases yet. Maybe we're testing a little more, maybe that's part of it, but the number of cases in the state have actually continued to go up, and in the days since then, even more so. So as we reopen, there's more of a risk that more and more people are going to get infected as we encounter other people. As of last Friday, 28,454 people. We closed worship at Zion to anybody coming in to be welcome at it from about the second week of March, maybe the third week of March, when there were just a few hundred cases in the whole state. And we are now at 28,000 people who have had the virus, 500 to 700 new cases every day around the state. So as we think about what does reopening mean now for churches, it's good to keep in mind it means hundreds of times, thousands of times more exposure to the virus going on than there was when we closed. The risk is still with us. So like the governor says, we got to do two things at once. We want to reopen and kind of phase back to normal, but also still keep up those same protections. So here's the breakdown from a little earlier last week. I couldn't find anything more recently that showed it by county. And you can see in northeastern Ohio, the darker colors mean more cases. So we're in an area where there's quite a few areas that have coronavirus spread. And if you look at Medina County, we're surrounded by a few of the top 10 counties in the state for number of cases that have been reported. So if you know somebody that works in one of those counties or goes to shop or socialize in one of those counties, that's the environment we're living in. That's where we're kind of at risk. So the thing now is to try and figure out what happens with the virus next. And we might be in this scenario where we have this big peak this year, but we've all done a pretty good job nationwide of reducing the risk of the virus. And so that first peak is the biggest one we're going to see. But a lot of people who have been tracking virus epidemics like this around the world are worried about a second peak that's even bigger. that might come this summer, this fall, this winter, because we slack off in the protection measures, and so the things can get out of hand again. Another scenario is that the virus might turn into a seasonal thing and come back once or twice a year to about a similar peak what we have just been through. And so we kind of have to keep vigilant for what's happening with the virus, where is it spreading, and what can we do about it. So where we stand, the virus has not gone away. There's no cure yet, no vaccine that's widely available. It is more contagious than the flu. It is more serious than the flu. There are people who get it and have no symptoms, not even aware that they have it. But others of all ages, not just older people, but of all ages, have had some severe trouble with it, and it can even lead to death in a large number of cases. So what we're reopening in part is the opportunity for the virus to spread further. And as we go back to restaurants and haircuts and all different businesses that are reopening now, we need to keep in mind the way the virus is still spreading. So that's episode 1. I'm still wearing my mask. I hope you are too when you go out. We'll take a look next at what the church is going to do about all this. Welcome to episode 2. As you can tell, I haven't had a haircut in a while. This is maybe what I would look like after a few more than 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it's been since my last haircut. But I'm kind of putting on this look to just symbolize the caution that we need to have now in the times that we're in. I'm going to put it this way. For the foreseeable future, part of loving yourself and each other and our community and the whole world is going to be to deprive the virus of chances to spread. So, as the governor says, we're going to try and do those two things. We're going to try and phase back in. We're going to reopen up some things, but we're also going to be very careful to take every opportunity to stop the virus from spreading so that it doesn't keep infecting more people. So we have the usual prevention measures: wear that mask, avoid your exposure, stay home, the cleaning, the sanitizing, the disinfecting. And if you feel like you have any symptoms, maybe that's a sign that you've contracted the virus, stay home. Don't expose other people to it. All those things that we already know how to do, we need to keep on doing. And if you suspect that you have the virus, stay home and don't take any chances on infecting somebody else. Watch for those symptoms that we all know about: fever and respiratory problems, all the usual things, muscle pain and fatigue sometimes. One symptom that some people are having is your sense of taste and smell fade away for a while. So all those things are things that you can keep out looking for. And remember that distance that we kind of have tried to guess. Is it 6 feet or is it 10 feet? And there's some evidence that even a lot more distance than that can be covered by the virus in certain situations. So just to recap where we are here in Ohio, we began with just a few cases and closed worship so that only a few people come in. Now, as we are looking at reopening, many, many more cases out there, and we need to really be aware of the risk factors at worship. So when we come together, when we're in the sanctuary, lots of people, we're pretty close together. We are there for an extended time, and they want you to think in terms of your exposure times time. So if you're just with somebody for a very short, passing them in the hallway, probably not likely that you're going to get infected. But if you're in proximity for half an hour, or however long the sermon takes that day, much more of a chance. There's evidence that heating and air conditioning systems indoors spread the virus further. So as you recirculate that air, it doesn't escape very quickly. It can hang around in that air and move around much further than the 6 or 10 feet. There's evidence that when we sing, you open your mouth real wide and you project your voice, that we're expelling much more of the virus and over a much greater distance too. And then think about the other things that happen when we're at worship. You might be tempted to shake hands. You're touching doorknobs or the back of the pew. You're picking up hymnals, touching the bread and the wine for communion. We won't even talk about bathrooms. Everybody's got to use that from time to time. And think about who's in the building with us. So even if you're perfectly healthy, even if you're not worried about it, if you were to get the virus and recover from it with no problem, there are lots of people around who might not have that same luxury. And we have a lot of older people, younger people who have some of the risk factors of heart issues or other internal issues, diabetes. All these things are things that complicate when you do get the virus. So what we're going to try and do is take a look at where we are. Here's the same chart, updated and pushed over to the left a little bit. And we want to try and look at where are we going to be in a few weeks. So just within the last few days, people have been able to go get a haircut and go into a restaurant. If somebody were to get infected over this last week, there's a few days to 14 days incubation time. They might not know that they have the virus for a while. Maybe they never know if they don't have symptoms. If they get sick, they think about it for a while and then take time to report to the doctor. There's testing delays, there's reporting on the testing. So from that time when somebody's first exposed to when it's widely known, 3 to 4 weeks can pass. And so it's even though we're opening up lots of things and taking that risk, we are, I think, wise to stop and look at how much of an increase is there going to be. Is it a big spike? Are we getting in trouble again? Is it low and manageable? What we do needs to depend on what we're finding in the state as a whole as we reopen. And that'll tell us a little bit about which of those three scenarios we're falling into. Are we looking at a bigger peak coming later? Or are we looking at it recurring? We can learn a lot about the virus over the next few weeks. I want to say a word about faith and faithfulness. There have been some Christian groups that say, well, God will protect us. God's not going to let me get sick. And, God will get us through this. The church will overcome this. There will be a church. God's mission will go on. And yes, God definitely has the power to um, remove the virus from the whole earth miraculously or provide some layer of protection for God's people, but we don't have a word that is what God is going to do in this situation. God has not spoken to us and said, you need to trust me on this one. This is a part of nature that's taken its course and is playing itself out, as have happened lots of other times in history. We are living with the virus until God tells us otherwise. We are just needing to get through this. And so this thing that comes to my mind is when Jesus told us, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, as he's getting ready to send his disciples out into the world as it is. And I think what he means there is that it's time to use all our brains and all the resources God gives us. We have to be reasonable. We have to explore and listen and learn, use science, use observation, use the experience from other parts of the world, and just make good judgments about what to do about this virus. Not tempt God or test God and just blindly assume that everything's going to be okay, but use those brains. And at the same time, our hearts are committed to God's purpose. So we want to serve one another. And that does, I think, include working toward reopening. There are people whose jobs have been lost or really compromised by the shutting down of everything. We do need to start working on getting that back. We do need to take care of people who are hurting in the meantime. But we can do both. We can use the brains and we can use the heart. This is Jesus's equivalent to the same thing the governor is talking about. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. So for Zion, what it means is we're going to try and look at a model for phasing back to something like things used to be. And the health team, council, and I are looking at this 4-level system where the colors, familiar kind of stop sign colors, look like um, the caution level that we're taking at each level. And these alert levels have to do with measurable things that are going on. How many cases are there? What's the load on the hospitals? Are we seeing a decrease? Are we seeing fewer new cases reported? So things that we can actually look at and tell what phase are we in, and from there we try and figure out, okay, during that phase, what kinds of things can we do at Zion? So, the society as a whole in Ohio and other states is just now moving from what this model calls alert level 4, very high risk, to level 3, high risk. We're loosening up, we're letting people get back to everyday activities, but limiting those, so you got to um, eat outside at a restaurant, or you have to be seated at a table with a distance between other people, wear your mask. We're in that mode where the risk is high enough that you still have to take some protective measures. Down the road, there's a moderate risk level where the virus gets under control a little better. And then finally, probably when there's a vaccine widely available, back to a new normal. And maybe some things will always be changed, but it'll be much more like it was before all this hit. So those are kind of four ways to think about where we are. And for Zion, we're in that first phase. We're still in the high risk phase. We may be able to come out of that soon, maybe not. We're watching. But things that are happening right now, we're gonna keep that Sunday live stream going. Um, had a lot of positive comments about that, and even after more people can be in the building, we want to try and keep the live stream available for those who can't come. Our spiritual growth team doing a wonderful job putting home kits together for Vacation Bible School and Sunday School, and the care team also doing a wonderful job working to stay in touch with people alongside me. And I think we can expand that a little bit too, so we might be able to reach out individually with people as the weeks go on in ways we haven't been able to do just yet. So then what comes next? We're looking at those phases. Council and the health team and I will be looking, monitoring, evaluating what phase are we at, what can we do with that. Just within the last few days, in fact, I think yesterday was the day that the CDC finally released detailed guidelines for churches. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. And so our job is to know where are we, what phase are we in, and what can we do, and what are we not yet able to do. And so if you think about that a little bit, where are we with the whole virus? What we're trying to do is just watch those phases, be safe while we can. Doesn't look super bad, right? And make adaptations as we go. So that's episode 2. Stay tuned for a little bit about more that's coming up after that. Okay, I'm back. It's me. I have my real hair. Mask is gone. You can see my face again. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit face to face about where we're going after the phase that we're in right now. What are some future possibilities? So just to recap, here's that 4-level model again, looking at what the risk is and phasing that out over time. So as the virus abates, we're able to offer more things that we can do together. And I just want you to know that this is something the whole church around the world is coming to grips with. This is a little screenshot from a Zoom meeting that we had with the bishop a couple of weeks ago. Pastors from 3 of the conferences in the synod. There were 61 people on Zoom, and it worked pretty well. But each of us trying to offer what we can, figure out ways forward, and just an awful lot going on in terms of conversation, learning, discerning. Um, Everybody's trying to figure this out. So I'd like you to remember as we move in this direction, everything that we're talking about, and I'm going to give you some possibilities, everything has risks of its own and details and costs to figure out. Even if we decide today that something's a great idea, and yes, we should definitely do this, it'll take a little while and some money and some planning and some teamwork to be able to make it happen. So I really need to ask for your patience. We're doing everything that we can to move forward and keep everybody safe, balance those two things, do those two things at the same time. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And it takes time for all that to play out. So I appreciate your cooperation, your patience, and your prayers as we work on that. So here's what we're trying to define for Zion on that four level diagram of the phases that we're in. And again, we're at phase one. We're in that very high risk phase. We're continuing with the same things we've been doing since March, and nothing's going to change right away. We've already said all the way through May, we're not going to change anything. Into June, not yet. We'll meet in mid-June and kind of evaluate what is going on in the society as everything's reopened in terms of businesses and barbershops and restaurants. Is there a spike? Are things manageable? And so at some point during this summer, we may be able to come down to that high risk level where the virus is still with us, but it's not spreading as rapidly as it had been. And I want to come back to that one with some suggestions and possibilities, because that's the next phase. That's the one people are having questions about a lot now. The third phase, when there's moderate risk, when we can comfortably meet together and know that where the virus is present, that it's containable, that we have contact tracing in place, we can know who's got it, who's been exposed, and have much higher confidence that when we get together, we're not going to be starting another great big spread of the virus. So at that point, in that phase three, that's when we would be coming back, worshiping in the sanctuary. Things still won't be as they were. We'll have some protective measures. There may be masks. We may not be singing because of the risks that I mentioned earlier in one of the previous episodes. But we can at least gather in larger groups. Then the fourth phase is they've called it the new normal. I like the model that has been suggested here at Zion that there are multiple next normals, and that's what we're actually talking about. That fourth phase is when the risk of the virus is so small that we can worship without worrying about it a whole lot. It'll be like a flu season or something like that. So that'll be our ultimate goal. So it is coming. We will get there. This is a path forward. We don't know the timeline yet because it depends on what's going on with the virus, but this is our way to make a step forward as we're able each time. So in that high risk phase, when we do get to phase two, what are some possibilities? And I want you to just again think of these as things we're offering, we're bringing up, we're discussing. There aren't any guarantees. We don't know that we'll be able to make these work. We are going to be doing a survey of the congregation to see what people think and feel about each of these options, and that'll help us decide what we turn to first, whatever seems to be most helpful to people. So some churches in the area have done a drive-by with staff or lay leaders, council members, other people, who you might want to see in person. They'll be there, maybe under the canopy. Maybe you drive up in your car and roll down the window. Everybody's wearing a mask, but you say hello and talk and pray, blessing back and forth. Some congregations are doing drive-in worship. So in our parking lot, you would come stay in your car. Some congregations are using a FM transmitter, so you tune your radio like in the drive-in, or you have a little box that you can listen to. At Zion, we have outdoor worship that's part of our tradition already, and maybe since the risk is lower outdoors with fresh air and a bigger space, we might be able to have worship happen in an outdoor setting before we can come indoors. Small groups, definitely we want to try and get some of those organized to meet online or by phone. And there's a bubble idea that you have your people that you're living with. That's one bubble that you're safe with. There might be possibilities that you could combine your bubble with another family's bubble. Get to just a few people together who are committed to keeping each other safe. Maybe you can see each other in person and not have to worry about the virus being transmitted within that trusted small group. And other options. Those aren't the only things that we're looking at. So a few weeks ago, I mentioned the holy spatula, where we had in the book of Acts the world being turned upside down by God, and God turning people from one way of worshiping to a new way of worshiping. So there in the story of Thessalonica, they had been worshiping idols, and Paul showed them about the real living God. I think we're in a time too where the Holy Spatula is active in our lives, and God is helping us to see about worshiping and gathering and being the church in new ways. So I just encourage us all to think creatively about where we're going and how we can get there step by step, phase by phase. For now, we're in phase one. We're looking at when we can switch over to phase two and implement some of those ideas. And I definitely really do appreciate your thoughts, your prayers, your patience, your ideas. If you see something that's working in another place and you have ways that it might work at Zion, we'll add those to the mix and think about it. And we will get forward to this together. So that was episode 3, the next normals. One more episode coming up in a few minutes to think about one other dimension of all of this as we look at our future together. All right, for episode 4, I have my spatula back, and it's a good chance to think about where we are and how God's turning us and what's going to come up in the near future. How is God using the gifts of everybody and combining that into a mix that leads the church forward? That's where I want to end today, episode 4 here. So I'm calling this section Zion's Loving Leaders. And I want to present this slide a little differently than I usually do. I want to start at the bottom. I've talked to you about this before, that I think a pastor's job is to be an encourager, an equiper, and help other people to do the ministry of the church. It's not all about what I do, but it's about what we do together. And my job is to kind of help facilitate that. So for me and the other staff, people who are employed by Zion and have those kind of volunteer positions in important places, our job is to love by serving, equipping, encouraging other people. And then there are teams that we've had in place for quite a while. So the care team, invaluable for me to have a whole bunch of people that are calling, checking. We can't visit right now, but we have done a lot of that. Just trying to stay in touch with people. A while ago, we started the communication team working on the website and other ways for us to keep in touch through all of Zion's communication methods. So most of those people have been doing a lot of work way before I came, and I appreciate all the continued effort that they give. We've recently added the health team, and that started off as people with medical experience to help us understand the coronavirus. Now we're starting to add some logistical experience and people who understand how things flow, how to make a plan and stick to it and communicate it, since that's kind of the next work coming up for us. And all of that is to serve council and our focus teams. These are the people that you've elected who are doing valuable ministry, keeping things running, communicating and connecting other people. And ultimately, the loving leaders that we want to put into place and give encouragement and equipping to is you. So everybody at Zion has the ability to lead somebody else, to set the tone, set the pace, let your attitude and your actions guide other people. And we all have a responsibility to think about how we're doing that together. This is our baptismal call and our privilege and our right and our responsibility as Christians. So here I'm going to take from a couple of slides of a sermon from a couple of weeks ago, just to remind. I've been saying all that same stuff since I got here. That you are the church. The church is not the building. The church is definitely not the pastor or the programs. You, the people of the church, are what really matters, and God works through you. The question that we enjoyed playing with a lot in the last year or so: what is God doing through me? Still a good question to ask. What is God doing through me right now in this weird time that we're living through? And even while we're stuck at home, while we're venturing out a little bit with distancing and these other safety measures, we can be ambassadors for Christ wherever we go, even if we're going there electronically. So this is what it means to have that holy spatula, God turning us, God turning the world around through us. All the things that God does are done through ordinary people. You've heard me say many times, small groups are the best place for people to learn how to be leaders, to facilitate a group, to just be part of a group, to be accountable, to pray, to read scripture together and offer your interpretations. It is a great thing to have a trusted group of a few Christian friends that you see on a regular basis, and just let that processing of your Christian life happen in a community of trust and mutual building each other up. So it's really hard. This is the building the airplane while you're flying it model. It's really hard to put that small group system into place while we're doing all the things that the church has traditionally done. This is one hidden blessing of the coronavirus, that we have a new way to think about ourselves that's shaken us out of our patterns and helped us to say, well, maybe we can be the church in a new way. For me as a pastor, though, it hasn't freed up a lot of my time. We're trying to figure out how to do all those things for the live stream and all the other stuff that we're evaluating for the future phases. And so I still feel that the right thing for Zion is to have that additional staff person that we've talked about. It's been on my mind for quite a while. We've actively talked about it since last fall of 2019. And we put some plans in place and we started to think about what that might look like. And we started reading this book about how staff people can facilitate the construction of a set of small groups that is open for anybody who wants it in the church and beyond. This would be an opening into the community. And then the virus hit, and the Holy Spatula turned everything upside down. And God said, well, you're going to have to think about this in new ways. So throughout all that, you know the basics of the story. We had the opportunity to think about becoming an internship congregation. And in many ways, I think it's an answer to prayer in lots of different dimensions. So an intern is somebody who is a pastor in training, going through candidacy in the ELCA to serve the church in some way in the future. An intern joins with a congregation. In this case, we're talking about a year, and they work with a learning and serving covenant, which is a great description. So the intern's job is to learn, kind of try out these things, be a pastor with some supervision for a while, and serve. Really be active in the ministry of the congregation. And while the congregation hosts the intern, the congregation covers those costs, the stipend, the kind of living expenses equivalent. And we also provide a committee to support the intern as they learn and serve. So here's where I think it's a win. It's a win for me to have that colleague, that additional staff person, to be about the work of the church and help us to turn that corner, to be turned by the Holy Spatula and face the future in a new way. For Zion, I think we had talked about different ideas of having a leader. Who would that new staff person be, and how long would we be able to sustain the position? Here it's defined. It's 1 year. The cost is much lower than to hire a full-time or call a full-time person. And yet there's that new leader in place that can encourage and equip as well. Zion's going to be a great internship for a student, even as crazy as the world is right now. Students' internship needs to happen somewhere, and I think Zion offers forward-thinking, caring, loving, creative, talented, gifted, called people who care about each other and care about the community and the world. What better place for an intern to try out ministry? By being a place that trains an intern and prepares that person for future ministry, it's a gift to the church. The church continues and goes on, and you know that Pat and John Van Orstel, all the memorial gifts given in their honor, their family has agreed. It's a great match with their life of ministry to give a good start to this next intern as well. And so for the whole world, we have a great model of partnership, of hope, we're not standing still. We're not treading water. We're actually proactively looking at the church of the future and trying to be that in as it comes into being phase by phase. So for the internship, I do think it's part of this whole discussion of what are we doing next and how are we going to get there. I would like you to pray, please. Ask for God's guidance. Ask what God's will is for the whole church, for our particular congregation, for each leader here. They're in the bulletin that goes out this weekend. You'll have a place to send in questions. Think about what do you want to know? Are there details we haven't answered yet? Are there concerns? Get in touch with me or with a council member, and everything about that will be printed in the back of the bulletin this week. We still want to receive pledges and donations toward the cost of the internship anytime. So when we meet on June 7th, we'll be able to tell you how much has been committed, what cost is remaining, and what the rest of the responsibility of the congregation would be. And then after the June 7th meeting, we will vote by mail, email or US mail. We want each person to be able to vote privately and not have to be voting in front of everybody else online. And so we'll hold the vote open until that Friday, June 12th, and everybody's votes will be counted officially on that day if you're a Zion member. So for love and leadership, that means you. It means me. It means council and all these other groups that we've talked about. It's an exciting time, even though it's a troubling time and we're losing sleep and worrying and thinking about how things are going to be. God has good things in store for us. That holy spatula is alive and well and turning the church into something new for the future. So I'm eager to see how that plays out, and I hope you are too. This is a time that bothers a lot of us. I, like a lot of you, can't wait for the day when we can get back together and have things be somewhat like they used to be and be able to hug and share the peace and all those kinds of things. That time is not right now, but with the 4 phases and with the plan in place to help us learn to be leaders and to be growing Christians in small groups, open to God's work here and in the community, we will move ahead little by little, phase by phase. So I want to close. This is the last episode. There is no episode 5. Maybe I'll be renewed for a second season or additional episodes, but not so far. I want to close with this prayer from the red hymnal. It's one of my favorites for uncertain times. And I would ask that you pray with me. Oh God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So thank you for sticking with these episodes and binge watching things that I wanted to update you on. Please get in touch if you have questions about any of this. And again, share your ideas and your thoughts and your hopes. God bless you. I hope I can see you in person soon. And if I can't, I hope I can see you through a screen or talk to you on the phone. God loves you and God has a plan for all of us. And I look forward to seeing where that goes with you. God bless you. God's peace.